Thank you so much for joining us today. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emma Brown and I'm the founder of Whimble. We are a care tech platform based in Ottawa, and our goal, or what we're trying to do, is to create an Uber-style platform for personal care where people in need of urgent or short-term personal care assistance can connect with vetted, experienced, insured attendants on demand. And Luke and I were just chatting about events. We also partner with event organizers and venues to basically guilt them into offering on-site attendance services as part of their accessibility accommodations for guests, volunteers, and employees who might need extra support. So just to give a bit of context for today's conversation, my kind of lived or primary experience, or I should say probably secondary experience with physical accessibility has been through my younger brother. He has spina bifida and he uses a manual wheelchair. And I'm so excited to talk to Luke today because I can't begin to count the number of times our family's been going out for dinner or we've been trying to do something in community and we encounter the classic, like, there's just one small step, which seems to be quite prevalent, especially where we're based in Ottawa, with a lot of restaurants and other businesses where there's just like one small step and don't worry, but it might as well be 100 steps sometimes. And I know for my brother, he doesn't always love the assistance that me and my other siblings provide because it tends to just be a pretty ruthless shove up or down the step. So he doesn't love the experience. We get grumpy about it and our shoulders and backs are always hurting. Yeah, it's a very common theme in my life to encounter that barrier with my brother. All that to say, the proliferation of StopGap ramps has made an enormous difference to my family and many other people I know. And again, this is why I'm so excited to chat with Luke Anderson today. After sustaining a spinal cord injury in 2002, Luke was introduced to this inaccessible reality for wheelchair users. He channeled his frustration into action, co-founded the StopGap Foundation, which raises awareness about the importance of a barrier-free and inclusive society. Iconic, brightly colored ramps can be found in more than 60 communities all over Canada. And Luke is a licensed PN, co-chair of the Accelerating Accessibility Coalition, Governor General's Meritorious Service Medal recipient, and I thought the coolest part was an aspiring harmonica virtuoso. We should have had you playing some like intro music, like waiting music. Right. Thanks so much for joining us today. I know you have a ton on your plate, so really appreciate your time. And not sure if there's anything I missed in that intro that you wanted to add before we jump into the questions.
Thank you, Emma, for the intro. And yeah, before getting started here, I was talking about how important it is to connect. Oftentimes organizations like ours work in our little bubbles, and I'm learning more and more. So increasingly understanding the importance of collaborative action and really giving ourselves an understanding, not only as entrepreneurs, but just as humans, the importance of understanding our unique and varied, different, equally valuable ways of experiencing life. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I find sometimes with these types of conversations, you sometimes leave being like, oh, that was a really nice group therapy session because we have a lot of common struggles, which we might get into today. So yeah, I'm curious to start just to, because we have like many of us on the call will hopefully obviously know where StopGap is today and recognize the iconic logo from ramps around our cities. But I was hoping you could take us back to the early days after your injury. Was there a moment, or what was the moment that really sparked this idea of this shit has got to go? This has to be dealt with?
Yeah, the spark goes way back to that moment when my life changed in a split second. And I was all of a sudden introduced to a world that's not well suited for someone that uses a mobility aid, for me, a power wheelchair. And so it's been a long journey that led up to the creation of the work that StopGap is doing today. Important situations that I would bump up against. You mentioned the multiple, like so many, you can't count them, experiences where you've literally bumped up against a barrier or been misled about accessibility calling ahead, asking the restaurant staff if their space is accessible, only to find out that there's just one step. So all of those things are very relatable for me. And over time, they became increasingly frustrated. Five or six, seven or eight, hundreds, made my frustration with this issue boil over. And so there was that experience, this sort of accumulation of really unfortunate, disappointing, frustrating, aggravating experiences, literally and figuratively bumping up against a barrier. And I was also having conversations with other people who were experiencing similar frustrations, those using mobility aids, people like parents pushing strollers, the elderly, people with temporary disabilities due to an injury or illness. And then there was this boiling over moment that happened while I was working out of an office building that had three steps that separated the sidewalk level from the elevator lobby level. So at least twice a day, I would need to rely on someone to help set up this ramp that allowed me to get in and out. And so there's these discussions that I was referring to with these different groups of people who were explaining similar challenges and frustrations, not being able to access space easily or safely, independently. My good friend and coworker, Michael Hopkins, would often help set up the ramp. And we would have these really important conversations with all kinds of people that were benefiting from having access to the ramp when it was out. And I love sharing that I would say 9.5 people out of 10 would choose to use the ramped side. There's a double entryway to the office space, and the ramp would be set up on the left side. People could choose to use the stepped side, but most of the time, most people would, whether they needed the ramp or not, would use the ramped side. And so all of this experiencing barriers and the frustration with the ramp that had to be set up every time I needed to get in and out of the space, these discussions that were happening in front of the office space, and a realization that, whoa, when we put something in place for me or someone with a disability, generally we all end up benefiting from it. And so Michael and I put our heads together and we thought, why don't we try to get these important messages out to a broader community? And it was in that moment on an elevator ride up to the fourth floor office space, the spark that ignited what is now a movement, with the intention of bringing more people in on these discussions, this conversation, and highlighting the value of having a space everyone can access, getting people more aware of our human right to equal access, and to get people thinking about really great ideas that could help overcome some of the barriers that we're all affected by, whether by direct affiliation with disability, being involved through a family member or a close friend, or simply due to the natural aging process. We will all experience a shift in the way that we move around our homes and community. So it's in our best interest, so important to be working together, to be removing barriers now and thinking about really great solutions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Were the ramps like the core part of the initial concept, or were the ramps like an add-on, almost a marketing tool, or how did the actual physical ramps get involved?
Yeah, they were and still are a very central part of our strategy to raise awareness. And Michael coined the name StopGap. The play on words is just strategic. We wanted the ramps to stand out and draw people in. So they're brightly painted for a reason. And they have the website stenciled right on them for a reason as well. We wanted to draw people's attention and direct them to the website to learn more about our mission. And so there's this foundational awareness raising intention to the work that we started doing in the Junction in 2011. And there's also a barrier removing intention as well. So the name StopGap is strategic. It points to these ramps having the capacity to remove a barrier, but it also speaks to the temporary nature of the ramps. They're just a deployable, non-permanent element that can
Stopgap.
be the stopgap measure. And so the intention was to bring people in to this work and begin the journey of understanding why accessibility is important and ultimately convert or reach a point in an awareness raising or educational journey where business and building owners invest in a permanent renovation to the space. So that all began in 2011 in the Junction. And what we thought was going to be a one-off project, we thought, yeah, we do this work in the Junction and achieve all of our awareness raising goals, change the world, change everybody's perspectives. And yeah, we were naive in thinking that was the case for a number of reasons, because when we first started in the Junction, introducing business owners with a single stepped entryway to this idea of having a free, brightly painted ramp that would remove a barrier and bring more people into their space. A lot of business owners said that they didn't want a ramp because they don't have customers that use wheelchairs. And so we quickly understood that we had a lot of work to do. And what that looked like is really digging deep. And for me, it was cultivating patience and an understanding that, whoa, all right, these responses are coming from a place of simply not knowing why accessibility is important. And I could bring my own experience of not knowing anything about what we're talking about today before my injury. It was the farthest thing off of my radar. And so, yeah, I've been able to bring my own lived experience to receive responses like that and understand that they're coming from a place of just simply not knowing.
Yeah. We get that comment a lot of when we're talking to event organizers about having on-site attendance services. Way more often than I'd like, I get the response of, "Oh, we don't really have any people who come to our event who need care." I'm like, "That's because you're not making this inclusive and safe for them to come enjoy your event." It's a very frustrating chicken or the egg. The other issue we've run into a few times, I'm curious, maybe more with your initial ramps or if it's still an issue, is when you approach businesses, organizations about making accessibility changes or putting in temporary infrastructure, we often get a bit of a liability pushback. I've heard this a lot actually with the work Erica's been doing with hotels. I was participating in a session with her a couple of weeks ago through Ottawa Tourism. And a couple of the hotel operators said, we're not offering shower chairs or those airport style wheelchairs for people to use because we don't want the liability that comes with if that shower chair breaks or if that wheelchair breaks or someone gets injured. So I was curious if that was an issue for you and how you overcame that mentality of we don't want the liability associated with this.
It's important to look at the entire picture of the work that we're doing. So these ramps are not a permanent code compliant element. So they're not designed to building code. They're just a temporary device that business or building owners use to make their services more available to everyone. So that's a thing. We want business and building owners to understand the nature of using a ramp like this and what we're up against municipally in most communities all over Canada, there's encroachment bylaws that prevent business and building owners from having things on the public right of way. So flower planters, sandwich boards, cafe furniture, and ramps. I think, and this applies perhaps to the responses that you've been getting from different venue management, where we want to create a barrier-free Canada by 2040. We're supposed to be living in a barrier-free Ontario now. We're not.
Ta-da!
And so we're to look at these policies, building codes, municipal bylaws, insurance agreements, and really sharpen our pencils and think about how we can be guided by this intention to create a barrier-free country, province, city.
Straight.
Yeah, and it's a long game. Like, we're deeply entrenched in practices that are riddled with barriers for people with disabilities. The beginning of time, people with disabilities have consistently been pushed to the back burner and not thought of, not considered, not prioritized. And we talked about burnout before we hopped on the call. Really dig deep and understand that, okay, this is a long game and we're all needing to summon the energy and effort to raise awareness about these antiquated building codes that go against the intention of removing barriers and getting creative. It involves everyone from the legal realm to policymakers, different levels of government. Yeah.
I don't know if this is the right way to go about it, but one thing I've started saying to people responding when I get the liability pushback is, I guess as a business owner, you now have to decide, do you want to have a small risk that someone uses a shower chair and falls, or do you want a human rights complaint that you have purposefully excluded some of your target market? So I think I don't have a great answer to those concerns yet, but it is definitely a long game. Just even the fact that in encroachment bylaws, flower pots and ramps are like treated equal is absolutely crazy.
We have to think of safety first. I swore an oath when I graduated from my engineering program to uphold public safety as paramount. And so bylaws, building codes are there for a reason, to make sure that we're designing, putting things in the public right of way. We're considering everyone. We have to think inclusively. And we also have to think about the buying power of the disabled population, this untapped market that we've all in this space have heard about and know about. To think globally, it's in the trillions of dollars. Here in Canada, it's in the billions. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, and echoing what you shared about the event experiences that you have and the services that you're promoting and getting pushback around. It's, if we put those services and build that infrastructure, then we're accessing and growing our, speaking for the business owners out there, we're expanding our customer base.
Exactly. Yeah, we have actual tangible data that when an event is accessible, when it offers on-site attendant services, when a business has a ramp, like more people shop or attend, they stay longer because their needs can be met on site. They spend more money on concessions and merchandise, and more people buy tickets to begin with who wouldn't have otherwise gone or participated or gone into the store. So there's a huge business case there as well. And figuring out how to like better tell that story, I think, is one of the challenges I have right now.
You're right. And we have metrics for that. And that data is there. The proof in the pudding.
Exactly. I was also curious because I know a little plug, but Whimble's recently published an inclusive events guide, and Luke was very kindly one of the contributors to the guide. So I wanted to just talk to the events accessibility space a little bit because as you and I both know, the number one is get rid of those literal physical barriers that you slam into. And then once you can get into the building or access the venue or attend the event, what's next in terms of making events, or what are the signs that an event is truly inclusive or truly accessible to you?
Yeah, it begins at square one, which, if we're to think about an event experience, often it involves purchasing tickets. What is the ticket purchasing experience like? And so, depending on the platform, there are good ones and there are not so good ones. Is the platform accessible? It lives in a digital realm these days. What are the options available on the ticketing site that not only gives people flexibility and fluidity in choosing, say, large format text or high contrast, but also gives people access to accessible seating options? Like, oftentimes you have to call. And the last time I did this for an event in the winter, I was caught in a loop of, oh, you have to call this number. And then I was given the number. I'd call that number and I was looped back to the original number. Just an absolute nightmare of an experience. And
Mhm.
so, again, it begins at the ticketing stage. And then from there on site, there's all kinds of things that help make an event accessible. And for me, it's having options. If a paper ticketing copy is something that meets someone's needs for efficiency and ease, then that's to be available. If it's a digital type of experience for getting through a gate, and having options available for someone to, again, meet their needs for ease and access, it's so key. And then that those options are to extend throughout the event experience. For me, if I'm to think about what a really great event experience feels like, it's best described using the term access intimacy. So it's a term coined by Mia Mingus. They wrote an incredible essay about this feeling of, for me, it's having all needs met. And I think we can, whether people tuning in to this webinar have a disability or not, there's this shared experience of going to a space and feeling like all of your needs are met. This feeling of comfort and ease, being seen, being supported. So Mia Mingus was able to capture a term that describes this feeling of having all needs met.
Mm.
And for me, that's a big win. If I go to an event from beginning to end and feel like I've had my needs for comfort and autonomy being seen, that's a win. Yeah.
I can only imagine the relief and that feeling of safety and being able to actually relax and focus on the event and enjoying the experience instead of in the back of your mind, just always having to stress about, oh, how am I going to get out when
Yeah.
everybody's leaving through one small door? Or how am I going to get across the room to the washroom when it's a packed space, or whatever the stress is that's constantly running through the back of your mind? I can imagine.
I've had so many experiences of just what you described. I'll share a story. One of my first concert experiences, shortly after my injury, a group of friends went to a concert. We were super excited to go. A bunch of friends came in from town. I bought tickets for everyone, and that pre-concert excitement.
Buzz, yeah.
Buzz, I'd called ahead. I was told the venue was accessible, classic. Got there, waiting in line, and we make our way to the front of the queue, and the bouncer recognized me and as a wheelchair user and asked us to wait. They were going to get some help. And what I thought that meant was they were going to guide me to maybe a side entrance or something. There were 15 steps. So at the front of the queue, it was clear that this venue had 15 steps that separated the outside street level from the ground floor venue level. And so I saw that, thinking of the conversation that I had with venue staff over the phone saying that it was accessible. So what it turned out was their idea of accessibility was bringing four bouncers to lift me up 15 steps. So if you can imagine me encountering, imagine yourself encountering this situation where you're now stuck and basically on stage in front of this queue of hundreds of people waiting to
Mhm.
get into this venue,
Mhm.
in the spotlight of a situation that is very dangerous. Talk about liability, with my friends who we've been anticipating, and we're super excited for this experience, only to be in a position where I had to make a really challenging choice. Do I pull the cord and do we go somewhere else to try to
Mhm.
enjoy the most out of our time together? Or do I hand over the keys to my life to these four strangers to lift me and my 300-pound mobility aid up? Yeah, a
Mhm.
really so far from like what I heard from the venue staff on the phone a few days
Mhm.
before that, or a few months actually before that when I
Mhm.
purchased the ticket. So I've learned how to go about those investigative phone calls, and the experiences like that I've had have brought me into a clearer understanding of where we're at as a society when it comes to understanding what accessibility is all about.
Yeah. And even if that experience was, say, roughly 20 years ago, it's still today, like the solutions or the accommodations that some places we go with my brother will offer, like it's consistently just a less dignified option. Yeah, sure, we'll just lift you up in front of all these strangers, or yeah, sure, you can just go through the alleyway filled with garbage to the back of the restaurant and cut through the kitchen and make a big scene trying to get through all these tiny tables. Like it's just always, yeah, sure, you can get in, but it's not going to be a pleasant experience for you. It just takes away that like dignity of being able to relax and enjoy something. I guess my next and perhaps last question, then we'll go to Q&A from the audience, was like on this same tangent, especially for you, where you spend all day advocating on the bigger picture level, and then you spend all evening on hold with these friggin' places to figure out if they're truly accessible or not, or trying to research every move. Like, how do you maintain the grind in this space? Is there something in particular that fuels you? What keeps you going these days?
I think when we first started out on our awareness raising journey back in 2011, my friend Michael and I and our friends and family, we really wanted to plug ourselves into fun. We wanted to make sure that the work was rooted in having a good time and bringing levity to those tough conversations that we were having and continue to have on the street, holding someone's hands from not having any idea of the world of disability and why accessibility is important, and bringing them in on this learning journey. Really rooting the work in an intention to have fun. The bright colors are strategic. Those ramps are brightly painted to draw attention, and they're to incite this feeling of levity and joy and bring some vibrancy to an often pretty gray streetscape, but also our mind, or an image that we might be holding on what a barrier free amenity looks and feels like. A stainless steel washroom grab bar might come to mind when you think about a barrier free amenity. So, helping us and everyone collectively reframing what it feels like to be considering a barrier free world.
Mhm.
So, rooting ourselves in the work in having fun is so key professionally, but also personally. So, I've been getting clearer about how creativity and artistic practice is such an important part of my journey as a human, and how healing it can be to explore different artistic practices. During the pandemic, I began a music journey, learning how to play the harmonica, which seemingly is a really simple instrument. We've all had them in our toy boxes as kids, but oh my, it is such a technical, and it continues to wow me in terms of what is possible. It'll be a lifetime's worth of exploration and joy in really welcoming in an artistic practice that helps me manage the grind. Get so much from opening myself up to an invitation. Having grown up and certainly gone through my undergrad with the engineering program I took at Waterloo, there's this fear of failing. And I think this practice of letting go and inviting myself to move away from that fear of doing the wrong thing, messing up a note on my harmonica, or when it comes to the work that we're doing with StopGap and Whimble for sure, it's like inviting people to really lean into this innate curiosity that we have about wanting to know how somebody experiences life. And I mention this because it is a healing practice. It's a choice that we can make to lean in and just simply ask and just listen. Because not only is it healing for us individually, but it's a practice that can help build connection and harmony in our communities. So, yes, I do experience burnout, and those two practices, exercising our creativity, whichever whatever that is so important in helping support us personally and professionally. Yeah. And this other piece around just inviting that letting go of the fear of failing. It's been a liberating practice for me.
Oh, that's great. It's a good reminder for me to try to get a bit more balance, maybe because I get sucked down into the Wimble rabbit hole, and I need to, yeah, remember that I get fueled by having these creative outlets or projects. I don't think I'm cool enough to pull off the harmonica, but I'll see what I can come up with. Okay, I just wanted to give a few minutes in case anyone else has questions. There's a couple pre-submitted questions, but the Q&A is open and I think the chat is open. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask Luke, I will keep half an eye on that, and then I'll look at the list of pre-submitted questions as well just to see if there's anything we haven't already covered. Oh, this is a good one in terms of practicality. So for someone who's living in a community somewhere and they didn't specify what type of local business, but I assume wants to go into a local business and shop there or eat there or something, and it has the single step entrance. How do you suggest someone starts a conversation with that local business and the owners on remedying the situation?
Yeah, it begins in front of that business, going into the conversation with cultivating patience and just this understanding that there's two ways that conversation could go. That person could be not even at square one in terms of their understanding or awareness, or they could be on their journey somewhere, just need to have access to how and where to get a ramp for their space. So if it's the latter, then it's pointing people to StopGap or the other organizations that have pre-manufactured like folding or fiberglass
Mhm.
ramps that they could reach out to. We build and ship custom suited ramps all over Canada. So that is a possible outcome of a conversation like that. The other outcome could be this realization that a business or building owner is at the very beginning of their learning journey. So cultivating patience for a conversation like that, an understanding that they just don't know, and being open to sharing a lived experience of encountering barriers and a deep desire to access services or delicious food or whatever the space may be, and how there are many other people that would like to access that space. Yeah.
So coming in with that like personal storytelling approach versus if you don't fix this, I'm going to sue you vibe.
That's been my approach.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
And be prepared to come back, because it might not happen during that
Mhm.
5, 10, 15, 20-minute conversation. It may take some time for that person to think about it and percolate on what they've just learned.
Yep.
We've certainly experiences where we've had to go back multiple times. And in some cases, it was that business or building owner recognizing how their neighbor has benefited from having a ramp, and their customers have commented or directed them towards how and where to get a ramp. We've seen that too. A year or two after their neighbor got a.
They saw the traffic going in and out of that business and taking advantage of it. That makes sense. Okay, and then maybe just thinking, trying to pick one last final question, and we'll wrap things up. Here's a big one, but if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how we approach accessibility, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it begins with attitudes. Our collective attitude towards people with disabilities, generally speaking, is that people with disabilities are lesser. And that's not true. And you know what? I'm getting a little more comfortable sharing this, but there's this voice in the back of my head that says disabled people are lesser. There's a bias in the back of my own head that has established itself through my own growing up, not having experienced or befriended someone with a disability. And I need to be aware of that and check it, because it's not true. That voice is telling me lies. And I think collectively we need to understand that, yeah, there may be an experience where we're hearing a similar type of message, and check that. Make sure that we're correcting it and coming from a place of understanding that we each have such valuable offerings for making this world a better place. And so my wish is that we all collectively engage in the practice of making sure that we're tuning into the voices that we're hearing in our heads. Again, I'm speaking generally. So my wish is for us to have a shift, an attitudinal shift.
Mhm. I love that. And like those voices come from a very real place where when you look around, you physical infrastructure and physical representations of that negative attitude. So it's totally understandable. But yeah, I agree with your wish for an attitudinal shift and not having to have that conversation anymore. Yeah.
And everything changes from there. We start making choices that include people with disabilities in the way that we design buildings and create infrastructure and set up our events in a way that includes everyone.
Mhm. And then it's just not even there's not even another option anymore at that point. It is that is the default or that is the standard. Yeah. Okay, Luke, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate your time and your energy and everything you've done. And I know my shoulders and back, thank you for your service. I'm sure my brother's had a few less terrifying encounters with siblings roughly shoving him up a step because of you. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone who joined us this afternoon. We'll be sending up a follow-up email with the recording. We're going to link to all of ways to connect with Luke and StopGap, more ways to get involved with their projects as well. And if you're on this call and you're an event organizer and want to learn more about Whimble's services, feel free to reach out. And we look forward to next month. And if anyone has any questions for us and wants to follow up with myself or Luke, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Luke.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and go Whimble.
We're a few decades behind StopGap, but we're trying.
Love what you and your team are doing. It's so important.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Luke. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Emma.